everybody to the PACtrospective. Today, we are with our artist in residence for Mary Rose, Ryan Strand Greenberg. Ryan is a photographer and a public art curator, and he was our artist in residence and created some amazing work inspired by the show, inspired by the Woodlands and the grounds that surrounded it. So, hey, Ryan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you, Damon?
I'm all right. You know, as we're doing as well as we can. Thanks for joining us on the PACtrospective. And this is an opportunity to reflect on the stuff that we've done with Mary Rose and the shows in the past. And it's great to kind of catch up with you because, of course, I haven't seen you since we did Mary Rose, which was back in 2018.
Yeah,
so,
it feels like yesterday.
I know. So you're a photographer, you're a public art curator, and there's definitely some public art that you did that I want to talk about when we a little bit later.
Awesome.
But do you want to talk about a little bit your focus as an artist?
Sure. Yeah. So, like you said, I'm a photographer and public art curator, and my practices span across kind of the intersections of art, ecology, history, and time, which is, a lot of different things. But basically, at those intersections, there's really cool conversations to be had about, especially in a space like Philadelphia that has so much rich history.
So, and because of looking at a little bit of your background and the kind of work that you create, and and also like that you're a public art curator, and some of the stuff that you do is in different locations. I forget who brought us together. Do you remember?
Yeah, I think it was Kristen. Made me aware of kind of like your amazing artist in residence program that you do for your shows.
That's
and
right.
Like, oh, really? What an amazing thing that you guys do. Because there's not that much support for the visual arts in terms of collaboration with the performing arts. Just like you don't see it that much. And then I was like, oh wow, this was at the Woodlands. Like I love the Woodlands is such an amazing space.
Oh yeah. So since we're just talking about that, so do you want to talk how the Woodlands inspired the work you did for Mary Rose?
Yeah, of course. So the Woodlands, for one, it's a cemetery now, but I think it started off as an English style garden. So it has a rich history in sort of the botanical world or like the ecological world. It's a huge, expansive property in West Philadelphia. And yeah, like I said, it's a cemetery. So it's all about kind of like going to a space to recall and remember our loved ones, and also a space where there is a lot of loss and decay. And so those are themes that are really very present in the kinds of work that I made during the show. So
going with the ideas of the loss and decay, and the way things disappear over time and regret and things like that, which was a big theme of the show. And, because the show, as we've been talking about with the PACtrospective, was about a woman who disappears and is gone for 25 years, and then the loss that her family faced, and the confusion and sadness and grief that she experiences when she comes back. So I was fascinated when we were talking about this and the kind of work you were going to create. Now, correct me if I'm saying this wrong. The type of print that you did was called an anthotype?
Anthotype, yep, correct.
So can you explain to us what an anthotype is?
Sure. An anthotype is a printing process from sort of the mid 1800s. This is like pre-cameras time period. And it's a botanical printing process. So you would use plant life, sort of like a natural dye process where you gain dye from the pigments made from plants, and you put that on a piece of paper, and then you would put an object or a negative on top of that paper and allow the sun to bleach away the pigment that's not concealed. So you're left with a botanical print of the image that you've put on there. So yeah, it's like sort of a natural process. And all plants are light sensitive, they're photosynthesis and that kind of thing. So every plant will reveal some kind of image, and there's plenty of plants to be seen in the woodlands, of course.
So I, of course, have forgotten some of the stuff that you use, but I did go on your website, and And the stuff that you used pokeberry, goldenrod, crepe myrtle, black walnut, and that was all harvested, and the pigments used for the prints in the exhibition. So all the ink that you used to create the prints, everything was from the Woodlands, from like the grounds itself?
Yeah, like the Woodlands and sort of like the direct surrounding area. I think it was really important for me when I'm making sort of site specific work that it's kind of responds to the area, you know. And I think like in the sort of ecological world or the natural history world, there's so much to be learned from our plants, you know, like how they respond to the sites and how they are adaptive and how they evolve over time. So for me, that's a really important part of the process.
So like for myself, 'cause I was the producer for Mary Rose. And so, you know, I was working between, you know, what you needed and what was going on with the house. And I remember like bringing you over there and you were like, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be awesome. All right, I'm gonna need a lab. Like,
Yeah, well, yeah. Sometimes
so,
I'm a little needy sometimes.
so I remember going to Emma, I was like, well, in order for him to create all this work, he's gonna need a place on site that he can access, you know, whenever he has to get over there. And Emma and Jessica were super awesome at the Woodlands. And so in the basement of the Woodlands, there was a whole section that became the Ryan Greenberg section. Can you talk about like what you were doing down there and like what was that space for?
Yeah, certainly. And it's a public space also. So there was people sort of walking by as I was like doing all this stuff. Like they were like, what is this kooky guy doing down, this artist down here? Like what kind of science experiment is he working up down there? So yeah, it was like really, I mean, the house is just gorgeous old historic property. And so they gave me a space in the basement, which is sort of like has a very much like a wine cellar vibe, like an old wine cellar, to use for my process, which basically in that space what I was doing was extracting the pigments from the plants and putting that emulsion on paper. So it's kind of the space where I was like, you know, pulling apart the weeds, you know, taking petals off of flowers, cracking open the hulls of the black walnuts, and then creating the dye that then would go onto the paper. And then outside, what I was doing is exposing them because you need sunlight.
Hmm. Now, had you done that kind of work before, or was this a first for you?
Yeah, I've done it a bit. Not quite. I haven't done quite a whole exhibition of it, of that specific kind of work. And so that was a really exciting opportunity for me to do something that was like a residency where I was creating a body of work that then was going to be exhibited alongside something else, especially in such a beautiful space. That was really an honor for me.
So talking about the exhibit, so in the previous PACtrospective, we talked about the house and how we performed in the house, and then we performed on the grounds and then back in. So we performed mostly in the main salon, and then if it rained, we had our own rain room, so that we did Act 2. But then there was another large room that was basically the exhibit room. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you set that up and how you use also how you incorporated the found stuff that you found along in the gardens as well?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, like you said, there like in the house, there's like I think there's sort of like more main like 4 main rooms basically, like 4 big rooms, and I think some of them, like the room that I was in, doesn't even have electricity. Like it's you know that old kind of thing. And of course, when you're working, and I know this from my public art context, but like when you're working on an historic site, there's a lot of limitations on what you can do, which is probably why that room doesn't have electricity. You know, like you can't drill into stuff, you can't alter the structure, you can't do. So there was a lot of considerations to make sure that we weren't doing anything that would harm the facility. And you know, when we want to hang artwork on the wall, you know, like we could put nails in the wall. So I very much had to go with what was there already. You know, lean into like the context that already existed there. And so in that room, one thing that was kind of interesting I thought about the exhibit is I created these window units basically. Like I said, the prints require sunlight to expose. And so what I did is I put in the exhibition, I think something like 3 or 4 completed, like fully exposed prints, and then 3 or 4 in the window that were exposing during the exhibit that every day would be turned around, so people could sort of witness the print disappearing and also witness a print coming into exposure. And then I also, because it's kind of a scientific process, I mean, it definitely started as a scientific process. The person who's credited for the discovery of the anthotype really was using it as a tool to prove that plants were light sensitive. So yeah, and then I also, because it is so scientific, I included a lot of the materials like the black walnuts and the pokeweed and all of the types of plants that I used in the exhibit, so people could kind of like understand tangibly what was happening here. Because a lot of times people see the prints and they're like, oh, these are gorgeous, but how do you get from a plant to this? You know, like it doesn't really like make sense for them. And so it's really trying to create like a pathway between those two things, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So what was one of the most fascinating things about the art that you created, just like how a theater company will put on a show and then the show disappears after a time, because, you know, even if you make a record, even if you videotape it, it's still not the thing, because the thing is specifically to be made and witnessed live. So this play about a woman who disappears, what was really beautiful about your work was that your work was going to disappear. So because of the way it's created, it would fade over time. So the work that you created, and this is back in the fall of 2018, and now I guess we're over a year and a half away from it. Does the work still exist, or has it all faded?
Yeah, I mean, so the work always will exist to some extent. The image definitely is not able to be fixed. And so, you know, you can try to, it's kind of like time, right? Like you can try to fight against it, but ultimately it continues on. So I've kept those works have been included in a few exhibitions since then. And in spaces where there's light and people and, you know, that kind of thing. So each of them to a varying extent is completely gone. Like certainly it would be interesting to show you the images from when it was first exposed to what it is now, which is for many of them very, very faint. Like you could sort of make out that there's a figure in the image, but like who it is, like you don't know what's actually happening here. So yeah, and I think that's really cool in a lot of senses, because photography is so much about fixing a moment in time, you know, the pure document. And so this is much more of a living document, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to, when you get a chance, send me a picture of the one of Mary Rose, of Emily Johnson in the arch. That was my favorite one. It was such a gorgeous picture.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what it looks like now.
Yeah, and I was really inspired, like, you guys sent me the sort of, what is it called, the screenplay or the script or whatever. Yeah. I was really inspired by this. So that's why I photographed Emily, because I think like the idea of this figure kind of going missing, you know, that was going to happen in a space that's filled with light. You know, this figure was going to disappear from sight throughout the exhibition. It's just like the nature of the work. And so, yeah, I really wanted to photograph Emily, you know, who played Mary Rose, because I thought that was thematically really beautiful.
So, so you are also a public art curator, and you know, a lot of people might not realize that they've already seen your work because you were a part of the team responsible for Ghost Ship, which was down at Penn. Do you want to talk a little bit about Ghost Ship?
Yeah, Ghost Ship was a project, I guess last year, in the fall of last year, that was sort of a public art and history project along the Delaware River. And really, the Delaware River plays such a huge role in shaping what Philadelphia is today. Like, really, the civic life of Philadelphia ran up and down the Delaware River, you know, especially in the early days. And certainly also before then, you know, before European settlement, you know. So this was a project that I worked on with the Delaware River Waterfront Corporation. They sent out sort of like invitations to bring a project like that looks at some of the history there, because, you know, they're doing so much amazing work, bringing people to the waterfront, creating park spaces, which for a long time, since the 1970s, really, like, it's been so disjointed because of all the industry and 95 and all that stuff. So they really wanted to bring a project there that was looking at some of the history of how the space evolved. And I worked with this artist, Biangle Studios from Romania, to create a time-specific 18th century model of a ship, three-dimensional projection of a ship from that time period. And also, when you visited, there was an audio tour to kind of give you context for the time period of what was happening, and artists, activists, historians, archaeologists talking about how this moment really shifted and shaped everything that we interact with today. So I think it was a 1 month exhibition, and it was an amazing project. A lot of people really loved it. So
yeah, I mean, it was gorgeous. The audio component, you could listen to there, of course, but what I would do was I would listen to it in my car. So I would just play everything in my car and just listen to everything as it was happening. So the day that I went toward the end of the exhibit, and
Sure.
when I got there, the water spouts or whatever that where the lights projected on, it was down.
Oh no.
So I got over there and I'm like, where's the ship? And they're like, well, the machines are down right now. And how long has it been down? So it was about 10, 15 minutes. So I was like, this is the only chance I can get here. It's the final weekend. So I gotta see it. So I stuck around for like a half hour waiting for it to go back up. And then it did. So it was really kind of amazing because most people probably would go there and they would show up and the ship's already there.
Right.
So it was really really special for me because all of a sudden you saw the water come up, and then you just watched the ship appear. So I
Right.
really got the impression of the ghost ship just appearing. And
Yeah. I mean, and that was like the most amazing thing about it, because initially when they approached me, they were like, oh, we want to do something thematic that deals with water, and we're like, we know that's really vague. And I was like, no, that's actually really beautiful. Like, let's use the water as a medium for the project. And so it was a ship that was really created out of water, like those pumps that you're describing, pumped water out of the Delaware into the air, and then we projected onto that to create like this sort of three-dimensional ghost ship.
yeah, it was great. The collective ooh and ah that went up when all of a sudden the ship appeared was pretty great.
Yeah. That's like kind of a great. I'm actually glad you got to see that, because some of the best moments are really in the very beginning of the night. Like, I think it went like 7 o'clock. It went on every night, and then I think at like something like 11 p.m. it went off. And really, those two moments are like the most amazing, because you get to watch it appear and disappear,
Mm-hmm.
and the water just sort of like settles, and it just kind of like is this magical moment where you're like, whoa, where'd it go? I felt this is like a real object, and then it's like not there anymore.
Yeah. I don't know. There's like a little bit of a theme there in terms of like the work that we just talked about in terms of like permanence and impermanence.
Yeah, I'm really into like kind of ephemeral work.
Yeah, which is interesting as a photographer as well.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, in photography, it's that's why I really like the anthotypes, because, like I said, in photography, it's really like you're freezing a singular moment,
Mm-hmm.
and in a lot of ways, that's so unnatural,
Yeah.
I mean, certainly for the people who have a deep spirituality, they can do that and kind of like connect with the moment, but I think most people life is just kind of continuously moving.
Mm-hmm. So what are you up to now, Ryan?
Well, I'm definitely not unique in the arts in terms of like so much of the work that I do is kind of put on pause or canceled and postponed, and so much of it is pivoting, like to something that looks like online, because a lot of the work I do is kind of community process,
Mm-hmm.
working within communities to and bringing artists into those dialogues, So right now, yeah, I don't have too much going on. I'm working on a grant project with the Pew Center for Arts and Heritage. Um, that's a sound-based work with a Native American artist on another historic site along the water in Bucks County called Pennsbury Manor,
Oh
which is
yeah.
which is an amazing place. It's a historic site dedicated to the life and legacy of William Penn, the founder of Pennsylvania, and of course, his legacy does contain cultural histories of Native people. Like
Mhm.
so, but there isn't very much, to be honest, on the site that involves a Native perspective, and so we're bringing a Native artist into that space to create something that speaks to their experience and yeah, it's I think it's something like 43 acres, and it's everything. They redid everything. It was his home. They redid everything from like the types of materials to the animals that were there. It's really very very comprehensive in terms of what they do, and they don't do too much arts programming. So this is going to be kind of a new chapter for them, and they're really trying to do more to bring in a Native perspective into their work, because so many of the people that visit don't really have a firm understanding of what happened before, like Quaker settlement, in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Yeah, I was there. As a lot of people know now, I'm a history nerd, and so I've been to like a lot of the mansions and things and historic sites in Philly, and Pennsbury is one of them. And
Yeah.
but the one memory that sticks out for me when I was 8 or whenever I was there was you mentioned the animals there, and my one memory of Pennsbury is being chased by a peacock.
Oh man, that sounds terrifying.
Really, for an 8-year-old, it was super terrifying. Yeah,
Yeah.
but speaking of 8-year-olds, I have a little boy now, so and we go to now all these places. So,
Happy Father's Day, David.
oh, thanks, man. Thanks very much. But yeah, but I had forgotten about Pennsbury, and Pennsbury is a beautiful site, and there's so much history there, and it's a great little day trip outside of Philadelphia. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's just one of many. There's so many of these kind of historic sites along the Delaware River, because it's like I said, like early in Pennsylvania's history, that was really the lifeline, because so much of our resources and our people came, via the Delaware.
hmm
Uh, so yeah, there's many really beautiful sites along the Delaware. Um, it's amazing, it's only 90 miles from the Atlantic Ocean. It's kind of unique in that way.
yeah. Well, Ryan Strand Greenberg, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the PACtrospective. Thanks for talking about Mary Rose, the art you created, and sharing a little bit about the work you did on the Ghost Ship, and for the new work that you're going to have coming up once, we could all be with each other and visit Pennsbury Manor and do things and with each other with community again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Damon. Really appreciate it.